Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Lincoln Stoller from Victoria, BC, Canada. Sorry, couldn't resist. He is a, oh my goodness, I can't read my own handwriting, physicist, psychotherapist, and neuropsychologist. You can find more about him at mindstrengthbalance.com, and we're going to talk all about him and his work in just a moment. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers, viewers for my video game streams, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. 16 currently available works of historical dream literature. Most recently, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, a great book by a former, a man who's considered the father of golf instruction. Very interesting. He shifted over into that in correspondence with his readership. I always forget what's next. Oh, yeah. If you'd all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, a full list of all the books, MP3 downloads of this very podcast. Also, BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, trying to build a community there. And that is where I would prefer to receive any sustaining donations, if you'd be so kind, one time or recurrent monthly. Either way, that's enough about me and my disorganized shilling. Let's get back to Lincoln. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Good deal. Did I get that right? I wrote down physicist. Like, was that your first life, so to speak?
No, mountaineering was my first, and then physics, and then what happens? Oh, psychedelics, and then hypnotherapy, and then neuropsychology, and then clinical counseling.
Very cool. And we were talking just briefly, like I don't do any preparation. I'm thoroughly unprofessional when it comes to like how to build a podcast and do all this stuff. I barely got a handle on the shilling, as you can see. So we didn't talk at all about what your books were and where they come from and or what they're about. What would people find at your website?
Mind Strength Balance has my information as a therapist, and my focus is on healing and, healing, I suppose, if you think you need it, and guidance coaching for professional development, relationship development, stuff like that. The books are one's on sleep, one's on dreams, one's on COVID, the use of hypnosis, self-hypnosis, because that seemed pertinent. And generally, self-hypnosis for health is a underappreciated field. And then 3 others are on learning as opposed to schooling.
Very cool.
Big difference.
Yeah, those are not the same thing. Absolutely. More people should probably understand that. I saw an interesting thing. I'm always browsing online media and different stuff. I think it might have been on, the X platform, but formerly known as Twitter. It was an interesting social experiment in a way of they took a room full of people and they said, okay, just look at each other, maybe talk about yourselves a little bit and rank where you think your IQ is and put people in order. And so based on appearance and education, they did this ranking, and then they did the IQ testing and showed that the person who had a PhD and a very impressive title and all this schooling and spoke very well and all these things, she had convinced the others to place herself at number 1. And it turned out she was number 6 out of all of them. She was the last in line, the lowest IQ. Now it was over 100, it was like 112 or something. But the guy she thought was, inbred, corn-fed hick from the Midwest, he actually had the highest IQ out of all of them. But just, the appearance and the schooling tricked everyone into thinking it meant intelligence, that it meant capacity, versus just received information, so to speak.
Well, there's a lot to it. It's not a simple spectrum, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I've had a lot of experience with very smart people, and also I've had a lot of cultural experience traveling around the world with people who have no education or aren't literary. What do you mean literate? Literate, who can't write and read. And there's so much of it is cultural. I mean, the people who can't write or read come from cultures who don't write or read. So, they live in the jungle and that's their life. It means nothing. So
it really
intelligence wouldn't apply to them. Intelligence test wouldn't apply to them.
And a lot of it's cultural or situational, I'd say. It's like judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree. It's just a bad metric. And that we get into that a lot. It's like,
bad metric.
For sure. Your books on both sleep and on dreams. I don't know if you want to say a little bit about those. It's kind of the focus of my show, but
Well, I got a lot of people. Well, step back. There's a problem with sleep, kind of chronically in this society.
there is,
For the obvious reasons that people aren't given the latitude to define it for themselves, and it's not given a high priority in general. You can look at school, how school is designed to provide daycare for parents who need to go to work on time, and so kids have to have a sleep schedule that meets their parents, but kids need more sleep, but that doesn't matter because no one cares. And so then people get chronically sleep dysregulated. And it turns out, in my experience as a hypnotherapist and neuropsychologist, hypnosis and brain training are very effective for sleep problems, which generally come as insomnia, but can also be poor sleep. And so I wrote this book called The Path to Sleep, because there were basic things that people didn't know or do about how to coordinate their sleeping and waking lives so that it works, and how they need to think or not think in order to move into a sleep state. So that's the first book. And then the second one is called Becoming Lucid, and it's about lucid dreaming and what that might mean, because I kind of think it's a misnomer, since anything you dream is a dream, and anything you think you're doing in a dream is a dream.
Yeah.
Unless you wake up, in which case it's not a dream anymore. So I basically talked about the four situations of daydreaming and night dreaming, and the dreamy state of when you're waking up and integrating, and the strange state when you're falling asleep. And provided hypnosis MP3s in that book. And I really liked one guy's review of the book said, if you ever wanted to know what it means, the Buddhist koan of whether you're a person dreaming of a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming of a person, read my book. So I thought,
very cool.
Yeah. And then the other books are on learning and, as I mentioned, COVID. And there are more coming out.
Definitely. Now, that's very fascinating. I mean, some people may not realize how important sleep actually is. Good, restful sleep of sufficient quantity and quality. One of the things I like to tell people as often as I can, I don't do it much on this channel because we talk more about dreams than about sleep itself, but when I'm talking about sleep, let people know that the experiments are show that if you go without sleep for a sufficient time, you literally become psychotic. You start having difficulty thinking clearly and visual and auditory hallucinations. A very famous case of I think a radio jockey that went 3 days or into 5 days without sleep for a contest. He's trying to prove I can do this and I'm gonna win this contest, and he got wacky and just not sleeping and certainly not sleeping well can lead us into a kind of state of psychosis where we're just not capable of thinking clearly and our perceptions are off.
It can kill you too.
Yes.
I mean, sleeping is a necessary function like eating and breathing.
Absolutely.
2 weeks without sleep and you'll probably be dead. But since I started being a clinical counselor a couple of years ago, my sleeping has become more dysregulated because I'm basically empathizing with all these people and their strange lives.
Yeah.
And it sort of stresses me out. So I found that brain training is helping me again, which is basically meditation is a brain training, but if you do it with neurofeedback or some device, it can help you get there faster. Yeah. So that's basically what it's doing is it's getting me calmer and it's getting me more flexible in terms of moving into a sleep trance.
Yeah, definitely.
And staying there.
That's something I've found through my review of the historical literature that I'm republishing and enhancing with additional footnotes and whatnot, just to really reference and fully explain, well, who are these people they're talking about? They give one last name that I know, but does the reader know who was Maori and why are his sleep experiments important? That kind of thing.
Right.
But the idea of altered states of consciousness might be the umbrella term, and it includes things like hypnotism and trance and meditation and daydreaming and dreaming in general, and how they're all
psychedelics.
Yeah, and how they're all kind of connected.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. And there's some recent, speaking of psychedelics, some recent fantastic experiments. This is not medical advice, but showing that they have tremendous capacity to treat specific types of conditions in specific, maybe microdosing quantities. But it's like what they said. They had people with PTSD, I think, and they had them experiment with ecstasy or MDMA, whichever one that was. I don't know if you know, and that it
Same
kind
thing.
of, what, say again?
They're both the same.
There you go. I didn't want to express that poorly. But that it kind of reset the brain in a way that short circuited the PTSD reactivity to certain stimuli. I don't know if you've had experience, not experience,
Well,
but
let me just tell you, there's
go
another
ahead.
interesting thing that came out, which was ketamine is a anesthetic
Mm-hmm.
used for, it happens to be used for animals, but it's certainly effective for people. And at a high dose, it's hallucinogenic. And there's a lot of talk also in this area that the restorative properties are chemical, not psychological.
Mm.
Like it's a pill, a magic pill. So they gave ketamine to people who were going under general anesthetic for surgery in addition to their general anesthetic to see if the ketamine would help these people with their otherwise clinical depression,
Mm.
and it did not do anything at all.
Oh,
So it is suggestive that there's a therapeutic aspect that has to be coupled to the chemical effect. So it's not just sort of neuroplastic in its effect. Well, at least this is the suggestion for ketamine, but it needs some intentional work to go on at the same time. So
yeah.
flexibility is one thing, and reorganization is another.
Definitely. Yeah. No, you keep mentioning the idea of brain training. And I think that's a great way to express it, is that it's like muscle training.
It
The
is
idea that there's certain organs of the body we can't change the function of consciously. That's disputed, mind body connection. But the idea of the liver
absolutely
does
right.
what the liver does, and we can maybe impair it or more or less by certain conscious actions and certainly physical actions, stressing it out chemically. But the brain is a very different type of thing that we can exercise. And the idea that it's almost really never stops forming new neuronal connections. It's most active when we're young. We have the most, you say, neuroplasticity, but that doesn't mean it doesn't ever really stop. Anytime you learn something new, you're forming new connections or strengthening existing connections. Getting that.
Well, this is something you can
Yeah,
train, right?
yeah,
I mean, everybody knows, and I think you can feel if you're aware that well, you have to have some wide view, that there are states in which you're not thinking well, or you're not thinking creatively,
yeah.
or certainly it's easy to focus on other people, like our parents, who have stopped being flexible. And it's fairly easy to imagine that you could become flexible just in the way that a child is given a paint set, or you are given the freedom to create. I mean, this is sort of what we do on vacations,
Yeah.
if we're lucky.
We break our
And
patterns.
it's a skill. Uh, it's not just something that happens to you. It's something you develop to do better,
Hmm.
think better, be more flexible. Okay, we haven't even talked about emotions, but emotions are another flip side of thinking, which are not quite as intentional, but probably more important in terms of your motivation.
Yeah.
And you can also learn to, I wouldn't say master, because that's kind of ass backwards, but um, respond more effectively to your emotional triggers or feelings. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this is what the neuropsychology is. It's the intellect, it's the IQ, it's the feeling, emotions, the triggers, the trauma, the memories, all of which we sort of think we're in control of, but at the same time, we feel we have no control.
Yeah.
So, which is it?
It's very interesting, and I've mentioned this before, and I love the conception. So I'm very my work in dreams is informed by Freud, Jung, a lot of sources, of course, reading and republishing all these books, but I also consider myself, leaning heavily into kind of some of the Jungian stuff in terms of archetypal things, and I love the way the Greeks conceptualized emotions that appear to afflict us from external. That must be Aphrodite sending Eros to stab my heart with an arrow against my will, because that's kind of how we conceive
Mm,
or experience
right.
emotions, is as if they are beyond our control, and in some ways they are. I mean, it definitely seems.
Well, the triggers,
Yeah.
the triggers often are, I mean,
Mhm.
external ones. but you do have a choice of, how red the red in your heart gets,
It's true.
or how black, your heart
Yeah.
gets.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. No, for sure. That's where I was going with that. That idea that we may, and probably, it certainly, we seem to experience certain emotions from certain triggers involuntarily, but that doesn't mean we have to respond to them in a particular way.
Right.
We can choose how intensely we allow an emotion to expand after the initial onset. Or one of my favorite things to do is like this almost of a visual conceptual idea of get something out of your head and hold it in front of you and look at it. Observe yourself. It's like the trick with meditation is you don't try to stop your thoughts. You don't try to have particular thoughts. You surrender control and you watch them flow by. Oh, I had a feeling. There it is. That's the feeling. I had that thought. Some people misconceive that they are their emotions, they are their thoughts, rather than they are the person experiencing thoughts and emotions. And just giving people that context sometimes and practice that brain training to say, you don't have to be reactive. You can just be angry. Okay, I am angry. What do I want to do about that? That's the breathing room. That take a break, get away from the problem, to interrupt that. Certainly bad. Negative patterns of behavior that lead to bad outcomes that you've noticed in your life. Probably, I'm preaching to the choir here, but also for the benefit of the audience.
Let me add one thing.
Sure.
It's a big deal for me to recognize that we all have competing personalities, personal inclinations.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you, for example, say that you're angry, you can step back and say, okay, I'm angry, but there's another part of me that's reflective, or another part of me that's sad, or another part of me that's frightened. And I think it's really essential in most of my work to try to get people to see them simultaneously. You really benefit when you can see your feeling as a layered response of a sad person, a frightened person, an angry person,
Sure.
A frustrated person, and try to, in a dreamlike way, actually talk to these people. Say, why are you frustrated? Why are you angry? Why are you sad? Why are you fearful? Why are you hopeful? Why are you wistful? What are you looking for? And then you can, sometimes these thoughts float through your head like disengaged sentences. And other times they come forward and say, it's because I feel or think or remember. And that too, you don't have to be attached to. But it's better if you take some responsibility. So you're not I say being a victim is great. It's one of the best places you can be, because then you're giving everyone else the latitude to reveal themselves. Very useful to know. But then you don't want to be trapped in the box that maybe other people are creating or you're creating for yourself.
Sure.
So you want to see it, but you don't want to be it.
Yeah. And that's actually, that leads right into what I wrote down, this idea of how we conceptualize things often, I think inevitably informs what we do about these things. And the meaning of that for me is there's a trick of language that I've noticed across different cultures where in, say, American English or British English even, we say, I am angry. I am sad. And some other cultures say, I have anger. Like the I that is separate from the anger now has a hold of anger rather than anger being me. I love that too, of like just aiding that conceptual distance so you can pull it out of your head. It's not in you, it's an experience happening to you in some ways.
Well, in between, there's "I feel angry." What does that mean? You know, are you attached to your feelings or not?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so some people I work with, actually, the more dysregulated people can't do that. They
It's
can't
tough.
detach from their feelings.
Yeah.
And so they, you know, what happens when you can't detach from your feelings is it kind of gets amplified to the point where you act on it, and then you're identified with it, and you identify yourself with it, and then you get feedback that furthers you. You know, you do something angry, then now everyone's seeing you as the angry person, and they're going to deal with you as the angry person, and your opportunity to reveal your, you know, hopefulness, wistfulness, fearfulness is now gone because
Mm-hmm.
now you're the angry person.
Yeah.
And well, let's get into dreams. I'm interested where you're going to, before I forget my dream.
Right. Yes. Do you want to transition into doing your dream thing? We've got about, based on your time frame, about 30 minutes left. I don't want to cheat you of that experience.
Well, you know, we could talk about it. I think we should talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I have dreams that I've remembered for 40 years, although they sort of contract slowly to, you know, a focal image. And then I had a dream, but then the dreams that I have more recently tend to be, uh, you know, when they're fuller, they're more chaotic because now
Yeah.
they have all these scenes that don't connect. And um, sometimes they don't logically connect, and sometimes they don't seem to temporally connect. And so the more present dreams are sometimes harder to relay because of their complexity. Um, and then, you know, I wake up because my sleep has been interrupted. I usually wake up once a night. I usually have two dreams, and I can remember the more recent one, and then the earlier one is less. I'm going to ask you though. You
Sure.
know, there's supposed to be uh, REM dreaming, which is what most of our dreaming is, and is tends to be more vivid. And there's also supposed to be non-REM dreaming. And I just wanted, I've started to realize I've had what I can now conclude to be a couple of non-REM dreams, and they do have the reputation for being less vivid. And I'd wondered if you had explored that as a different type of dream for yourself.
I have not. So full disclosure, I'm the dream wizard or whatnot, and part of what I think drove me into that is I don't remember most of my dreams, or even that I ever had a dream. I wake up just completely. I may fade out of something where like something was happening. I was having an ongoing thought process, but nothing sticks with me. No images, no sequences, no story, just
Mm-hmm.
nothing. The typical fragment I would come away with if I'm aware of it at all. I remember one from I don't know, a few months ago. I have an image of me in my body versus looking at my body third person. I'm standing by the open rear passenger door of a vehicle. I think it's white, and I can't see any other people. I'm not doing anything. I'm just that experience of standing at that open rear passenger side door. That's the kind of dream that comes out if I remember it at all, which is extremely rare. Nothing, almost nothing since then that I can hold on to. Long story short, on that, getting into the REM thing, it was a bit, well, it was certainly eye opening for me to understand that what most people think of as the limits of dreaming is that they only happen in REM. And then a while back, I came across the literature that, well, they did experiments where they woke people up at variety of
Yes.
non-REM times and asked
Yes.
what was happening while I was dreaming. So it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting question to say. Um, it would be new information to me, and I trust your word on it that REM, for whatever reason, REM dreaming seems to be more vivid than non-REM dreaming,
Yeah.
that there's
Mm-hmm.
some quality to that. Maybe, and it's interesting to consider, is it the intensity of the dream causing the rapid eye movement, or is it the rapid eye movement phenomenon that somehow informs dreams so that they become more vivid? I don't have data on that at the moment.
Well, let me throw a third thing is
Please.
that uh, bilateral rapid eye movement, no, bilateral movement, even if it's not rapid, tends to coordinate the left and right hemispheres of your brain.
Ah,
They become more synchronized. Well, I mean, you could say it's neurological because your two eyes connect to the different sides of your brain, and your brain has to coordinate your image. So the left and right, I mean, you can make this is just sort of, neurological baloney, but it sounds good. And so, you can watch your brain waves synchronize by just physically moving your eyes left and right. And you can also say that the dreams that you're having during rapid eye movement are more integrated emotionally, intellectually, because in some sort of causative way, your eyes are, you know, here we get sort of metaphorical. Your eyes are taking the experience back and forth from your intellectual to your emotional sides. And there's actually, that dichotomy of intellectual versus emotional is just the crudest of dichotomies. There are many other, ways of dividing it visually, linguistically, spatially, emotionally, long-term memory, short-term memory, and then these emotional centers like your amygdala is supposed to deal with fear, and there's other parts of you that are reactive and other parts of you that are executive functioning.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of just, you're not just organizing left and right. You're trying to unmix the soup, the minestrone soup of your mind into some sort of order.
Yeah.
And I think that's what dreams are trying to do. They're trying to shelve what is essentially a collapsing experience of perception into some sort of order.
Yeah. I was listening to some other podcast with some people just talking about the way we perceive the world itself, and the idea of broad focus, seeing everything at once, versus narrow focus on something specific.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And there's I think there's the reality that we are perceiving everything at once all the time, but we cannot process that amount of data.
mm-hmm.
So our brains are kind of, as much as the eyes and other senses, inform that, but very much designed to, in a way, discriminate and narrow down and say, okay, wait a minute, I can process this much information at once. That's where we're going to, and we can move the focus. We can move it around and see what we need to see. But we're actually taking in all that information at once. And so my conception of the unconscious, which it was also a revelation to me, and I could keep mentioning this because I love this stuff. It blows my mind. There was a time like 100 years ago, they were very much in doubt as to whether the unconscious was an actual thing. I mean, theoretically. So that is how I conceive it, as like the pool of every sensation, observation, thought, emotion we've ever had, just almost like the physical structure of the brain yielding the complete data set. And then dreams also tend to be that kind of focus of, let's look around these different places.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as mysterious why something in the environment catches my attention. Why am I interested in this? Why does this inspire me and not that? Same thing with like, where do dreams come from? It's a mystery as to why that particular focus at that particular time on that subject in that iconic or imagistic or emotional form. I tend to think, and I'd love to get feedback on that, is that my theory, the way I express it, is dreams self-select for importance. If you remember them and if you wake up feeling strongly about it, it's probably something important to you. It's probably something you're desperate to understand, a situation you want a solution for, some situation you need to get a grasp on so you know what you're dealing with.
Let me add to that, because I know you'll enjoy it. I think dreams help you de-understand things.
Oh.
They defocus you. They broaden your attention to the other elements that trigger you. So in my counseling, one of the main problems people have is they're up against a problem and they can't figure out how to solve it. They've built themselves a box and they don't know how to get out of it. It can be as simple as one woman who's afraid to go out in the sunlight, and another person who's, as an investment banker, dealing with all these clients and their, knife-wielding intentions. And what a dream will do is it will take you out of whatever makes sense and reintroduce you to all the other feelings you have. I mean, to reintegrate, you have to re-experience or collect at least the alternatives. And many people are short of alternatives. They're focused on what their mind is telling them the problem is, or what the solution is, or what other people are doing in reaction to them. And, if you've got a relationship problem, you'll be thinking of the people involved in that problem and their behaviors, their goals, your fears, your needs. And the dream will throw you, you'll be playing golf underwater with an octopus or something. It will try to broaden your thinking in a very visceral way. And it won't be, it's not trying to resolve. It's not trying to give you an answer. It's trying to get you out of the answer mode and trying to, take you on a tour through the wax museum of your mind, where all these, animatronic images, whether your waking life is an animatronic image is a good question too, because it's all sort of contrived. And if you don't believe in it, it sort of falls away. If you just sit there and stare at people dumbly, they'll eventually go away. And so will a lot of other things in your life, problems and so forth, as well as opportunities. But, we're built as human beings to react intellectually and mindfully, and often it gets us on the wrong path, or it gets us entwined with a barbed wire situation we can't get out of.
Yeah.
And a dream will break us if we remember it. But wait a minute, I'd say even if you don't remember it, I feel it's doing its work.
I think so.
In how you wake up the next day.
Yeah. No, there's many times, and it happens more often now that I'm paying attention to it. The advice, sleep on it. It doesn't just, metaphorically give it some time. Don't rush to judgment.
Right.
Realistically, physically, like literally, I will wake up the next day with a solution to a problem. No memory of a dream, but I couldn't wrap my brain around it while I was awake the previous day. And I love this. A lot of the books, and this is, God, I'm all over the place. Legit autistic tangents. This is how my brain works. We're going to circle back, I swear. A lot of these.
Well, you don't dream because you're dreaming during the day.
I might be. I might be getting it all out. I think about everything all the time. It's just how my brain works.
Sounds like it.
I'm all over the place. But a lot of the language they use trying to describe what's happening as we are falling asleep, or what it means to be asleep, like definitions of what is sleep and how does it function. But a lot of them lean into the idea of abstraction or distraction, certainly. Like, while we're focused intensely upon something, I think it's impossible to fall asleep. That's where the busy mind keeps us awake at night, that kind of thing. But there's a what am I trying to say? A very real connection to that idea of abstraction, because as I was saying, the idea that the senses perceive everything all at once, all the time, and the brain's job is to kind of refine it down and focus. And that's a very functional necessity. If we think about too many things at once, if we're too scattered, we talk about that in, say, my mental health experience, someone's thoughts being scattered in such a way that it's not like mine, where I kind of eventually loop back around, but they just can't put anything together. They can't, dementia, they can't follow a multi-step process to get to the end of it. And so exactly what you were saying, that the, so while we're awake, the need, the very real survival need of intense focus on discrete things that have utility, that the dream experience seems, it does that. It expands it. And you said inside the box. I like the fishbowl analogy. It's like, for most of our waking life, we are inside that fishbowl, experiencing being a fish. We go to sleep and we kind of hold the fishbowl, like I say, get the idea out of our head. We hold out the idea of looking at ourselves in the fishbowl. And that's where we broaden that view, as you were saying, and kind of get to the abstract level of what's really happening here. What is this kind of experience? That's what I bring to the dream interpretation thing, is saying, it's one thing to be inside an experience, having the experience. It's another to hold it out in front of you and say, what type of experience is this? How does it fit in broader patterns of experience that other people have had, or patterns in my life? And it takes that level of abstraction to recognize patterns, I think. I don't know if you see where I'm going with this. I feel like I just rambled.
It's okay. Rambling's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, rambling's like dreaming. It's rambling. Yeah, no, I don't have anything to say. to add to that.
Fair enough. That's just fine. Well, we are our window is closing. I think we've got maybe about 10 minutes. We could probably talk for 2 hours.
Yeah, we
this
could
stuff
easy.
if we
Yeah,
had
yeah.
more time. I love it. That's why no kidding. I've gone as long as 4.5 hours with one dreamer. It was a long, multi-part
Well,
dream.
I
I wasn't going to cheat them of that experience. So
you should try. I don't know if you would want to put this on air,
yeah,
but we should do a hypnotherapy thing where I take you on a guided visualization, and then you'll have something like a dream. But it gets a little weird, so
yeah.
you might want to edit it first.
Well,
Put it that way.
we'll record it and I'll apply my own rule. If I'm not comfortable with it, I won't put it out there, right?
Yeah, let's see. It would be interesting for you.
I'm absolutely open to the experience. I think that's, any kind of a thing that is going to help me understand better and then give me a better opportunity to explain things to people that have less specific knowledge. I mean, that's what kind of where I classify all these things as educational, and I think of it as educational even when I am wrong and acting a fool, and definitely definitely in that archetypal sense. I mean, sometimes I'm the fool, sometimes I'm the savior, sometimes I'm the trickster. You never really know, and I just go with it intuitively in that sense. Like I never know what I'm going to do or what's going to happen. I just put it all out there and hope somebody gets some benefit.
Everybody should be a therapist, I say, because it really gets you in deep with other people's stuff. But some of it is problematic because some people are adversarial and they need to put it on you.
Yeah.
And then as a professional, you're obliged to take it. And some of it can be it's hard to tell where the sharp edge of the knife is,
Yeah.
And people can be self-destructive, and that's strange too. It's all, I mean, what we're talking about here is basically creative exploration, but a lot of people can find it to be very, I don't know if the word frightening or threatening or, at some level we're sort of maybe talking about memories of trauma and upset, which for some people might be the only way to their recovery. But then even that's hard to define. Do you need to forget it or you need to resolve it? I don't know. As a therapist, and even you can relate, your job is basically just to be a joker, just to invent. And I say people pay me to say stupid shit, and I don't have to be right because I'm just trying to do things differently, take them out of their thought patterns, and then it starts to sound like everybody's dreaming,
Yeah.
But they're not as fluid as a dream. They're much more concrete, and that's often a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a difficult thing. I mean, what you said inspired a thought in me, the idea of I've had at least a few dream interpretation collaborations with me. That's how I think of it, as a collaboration. Until I say none of the answers are in me. I'm not hearing, the voice of God. I'm not communing with spirits. I'm using no psychic powers. You've invited me in to your mind, and I'm kind of standing over your shoulder, shining a flashlight in the dark, saying, do you see what I see? What if we look at it from a different angle? So I think of that as the process of therapy itself in a way, even though I can't say this is therapy, capital T licensed. I'm trying to bring that experience to it. But I do, and I have, like I said, specific experiences. I have felt that resistance to certain suggested understandings that might actually be pretty true. I have a strong gut feeling. Now, sometimes you can see it on someone's face, or you can hear it in their voice. They go, hadn't thought about it that way. I don't think that's it. But then you get people who, like, you can feel the pull. It's like a pull away from, don't look at that. That is not, we're not looking at that. And I don't, in these formats, being not the Jerry Springer show to embarrass anyone or be salacious shock content, not wishing to do any harm in the process for entertainment, any of that, it's going to go with it. It's okay. Fair enough. You say no, we're moving on. Let's get what else we can from a different part of this process. If it was more private, if this was actually private counseling and therapy, I might also shelve it on a particular day, but then in the notes it'd be like, let's come back to this. Why?
Oh yes, I do that all the time.
Right? You have to.
Well, another funny thing is, just to mention, in therapy, often the most important topic or the most important issue is what they mention at the last moment, parenthetically, incidentally, irrelevantly.
On the way out the door.
It's the thing that's hidden furthest under the rug. And so I take those things and then I I put them back. I said, well, okay, well, let's take this ugly little piece of garbage you collected at the bottom and put it on the top. And now what does it look like? And
Hmm.
where does it direct your attention?
Yeah,
So,
that can be
yeah, I
tough.
mean,
That's where you
it can
get
be
some of
tough.
that counter
Hmm.
transference type of stuff too,
Hmm.
where it's like,
Yep.
I think this is important because looking at it will be
Yep.
beneficial to you,
Oh, yeah.
but you're not going to like this, and it might be unpleasant. And we do this together. How can I make you feel
Well,
safe enough to trust me to walk you through this and not let you drown?
well, this is why it's hard for me to do because I get how far do you want to get in other people's business so that you want to be able to escape it because they can't.
That's
Now,
tough. Yeah,
I mean, you got to go there to help them, but you hopefully can escape what they can't. But if you get too far, and there's always a question of going too far,
yeah,
it weighs on you. I mean, it does bend you, but hopefully not break you. And so you like to lift people out, but not get stuck in their swamp.
yeah.
Anyway,
That I would say that's on the art side of the art and science of
yes,
psychology itself. Is we bring our genuine person. Like, I love was it Rogers? I think is the two things he
yes,
said.
client-centered
Client said, but
therapy.
unconditional positive regard. I want you to come out of this better than you went in.
Ah, ah,
But also genuineness. I'm just me. I'm the real me at all
ah.
times. That doesn't mean now I have a problem with my filter. I absolutely do, but it doesn't mean being unfiltered or saying stupid or careless things that aren't focused properly on trying
Right.
to be
It's not
helpful.
careless, but it can
No,
be stupid. It
but
can
yes,
seem stupid.
yeah,
I call it unconditional positive disregard. You
there you
know,
go.
because
I'm
I
stealing
don't
that.
care what you think is important, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes we have to do that, especially when there's like resistance and whatnot. But I think the reason I don't push that in my interviews for a lot of reasons I've already said, but also because I can't pick up the pieces afterwards. I get one shot with someone. I've
Mm,
got to make it the best experience I can for them. So if I get too much resistance, it's like they're not ready to deal with that. That's not open to discussion at this time, and I can't.
mhm. Yeah, right.
It's that's my like I say my. This is not any license thing. I'm not charging money, but I bring my 100% of my professional ethics to it. Of I'm not going to open a can of worms I can't stuff back.
Right, right. I know
You
what
know,
you mean.
yeah.
Well, we've got 5 minutes. I do have to go in 4 minutes. So
Yeah,
you
I don't know if we're gonna
fit you.
get to the dream at all, or if you want to just tell it to me
Well,
and I'll
we
give you
can.
my impressions, something like
Oh,
that.
the dream is strange. The dream was being in a kind of maze with panels in the corridors, and they all seemed to be closed. But if you looked, there were handles like, the door handles on a Tesla that push in. And if you went around, or as I did in the stream, looking for these handles, I could open them and then they would open in a kind of um, a series of what's that the game Tesseract? No, where you fit the pieces together. They fall down and you have to fit them before they reach the bottom.
Tetris.
Tetris. And so I would open these kind of Tetris, three-dimensional Tetris spaces, and then there would be other doors and other indentations and other handles, and then I would try to get in through this series of doorways that I would create, and then I would tend to get stuck. And then at one point, I was looking for a bathroom. Bathrooms play in my dreams, and I
Mm,
found a bathroom, but it had no toilet, and I had to take a dump. So I said, "Oh, I'll go to another floor." And then I found another bathroom. It also had no toilet. And then I found myself in a stairway, and it had then it became sort of nightmarish. It had this uh, the stairway went around in a square depression going down, and in the center was just this big black dark hole. And I considered throwing myself into the hole, but I thought, you don't want to do that in a dream because then you might do that in real life. So I mean, this is one of the things about dreams. If you want to explore, become lucid, and remember, you have to want to do it in real life. You have
mm.
to want to explore and think about going outside your box in real life because there's a relationship between real life and dreaming. Anyway, so that's the two images I was left with are the opportunity to throw myself down this black hole into which the stairs descended, and trying to escape through these series of doorways that I opened that got increasingly narrow and I couldn't fit through. And that seemed to me, on reflection, two different ways to look at the same sense of being trapped in something. And then I have to relate it to my life, and I have a son and an estranged wife, and I am feeling trapped with her recently. And so I think, okay, well, maybe. And it reminds me in a very simple and perhaps ineffective way to think differently, right?
Yeah.
And what's the benefit? And then and then you have to look at, well, do I want to think differently, or am I committed to what I think is right? And why do I think it's right? And I think if you follow these things long enough, and it doesn't take very long, you become confused. And I think that's actually a nice place to be. It's where I try to get my clients in therapy. I try to get them confused so that they let go of what they think. It's like a dog when you're playing with a dog chew. How do you get it to let go? It just wants to tug and tug and tug, and this is the solution. It thinks it's fun. Dogs are always happy, but people aren't always happy. And they pull on their dog chew until their eyes bug out. And you kind of want to get them to, you could say relax. You could say many things. And then you watch them, and some people don't relax, and some people do. And like I say, if you can do it yourself, you're in a much better position.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's all great stuff. So my impressions, what was jumping out at me, and we'll do it super short and try to get you out of here, is, I think it's consistent with your personality that you like to solve puzzles. Like, that resonates with me. The idea of finding solutions. So you've got this iconic representation of Tetris. It's a puzzle solving game. We've got involuntary pieces coming at us. We got to find, where do they fit, or we're going to run out of time. We're going to fail the mission. But you're in a maze, which is another kind of puzzle, searching for answers, acknowledging the complexity of a situation, that it may be beyond you. It's like you never got out of the maze necessarily. You just found new areas and new puzzles to solve. And then, if we had more time to get into it, the separate part of the dream, definitely that there's this, what does it mean? We have to get into this, my initial impression, but what does it mean to poop, to need a place to evacuate your body, to get the stuff out that you don't want, or that needs to come out, the refuse. So to set aside something, and you're finding nowhere to relieve yourself in that sense of this burden, this something is like poop is, they call it, birthing a brown baby, that kind of thing. It's like there's almost like an urgency. There is an urgency to get it out. It's got to go somewhere, and we just, it's going to happen in your pants if you don't find a toilet, that kind of thing. It's just a human condition. So, and what that led you to, it appears, is literally a downward spiral into, you use the word depression, not to put you on the spot and hold you responsible for your words, but that, so maybe the inability to solve puzzles effectively, to find a solution you're looking for, an inability to unburden yourself of things that are refuse. And then it leads you in a way down this path to, well, looks to me like the road to a very deep depression, a very, a downward spiral. So what I would suggest is just as a broad snapshot of your personality is, you're a person who loves to problem solve, and you have some things you wish to be rid of, to unburden yourself of, and that you realize that if you don't satisfy maybe both of these things in the proper quantity, that is the road to a deterioration in your own mental health. And I almost never go straight to, let me give you an answer, but that's my impression. I don't know what you think.
Well, I like it. Thanks.
Okay.
I gotta go though, because it's 11.
It is time. We'll get you out of here. Let me do the goodbyes. Once again, this has been our friend Lincoln Stoller from Victoria, BC, Canada. He is a physicist, psychotherapist, neuropsychologist, and author. You're going to find his books and more at mindstrengthbalance.com. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers. 16 currently available works of historical dream literature, most recently Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson. All this and more at my website, benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Full list of all the books, etc. Also, benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com. And the last thing to say is, Lincoln, thank you for being here. This has been absolutely fascinating. I've loved it.
All right, let's do it again.
Yeah, definitely. And everybody out there, thanks for watching.
Okay, thanks, Ben.